Get your lying black ass out the car before I yank you out myself." Officer Grant Halverson's shout ripped through the intersection as he yanked Judge Nia Whitaker's door open and seized her wrist. He shoved her chest first over the hood, hot metal biting into her skin through thin fabric while traffic slowed and phones lifted to record. "Stop resisting!" he bellowed for the crowd, though her palms were flat, fingers spread, body rigid and still. "You people always think you're above the law," he sneered, pressing his weight into her back. His right hand slid behind his thigh for half a second. When it came back, a tiny plastic bag dangled between his fingers. He held it up like a trophy. "Look what I found." Nia stared at the asphalt inches from her face, heart pounding but eyes steady. Halverson had no idea the woman he was framing had sentenced men to prison for exactly what he had just done. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city streets as Judge Nia Whitaker drove home from the courthouse. Her black sedan moved smoothly through traffic, her mind still processing the day's cases. The courthouse event had run long, but she'd maintained her usual poise throughout, her navy blazer still crisp despite the hours of wear. Red and blue lights suddenly erupted in her rearview mirror, shattering her thoughts. Nia checked her speedometer. She hadn't been speeding. Following procedure exactly as she'd advised countless others, she signaled and pulled to the curb, positioning her car well out of traffic. Through her mirror, she watched Officer Grant Halverson emerge from his patrol car. He took his time, adjusting his belt with deliberate movements, seeming to savor each step. His walk was pure theater, legs slightly bowed, as if he'd just dismounted a horse. Each boot hit the pavement with exaggerated authority. Nia kept her hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, her breathing measured and controlled. She'd spent decades in courtrooms, facing down far more intimidating figures than this patrol officer. Still, something in his approach set off warning bells. Halverson stopped short of her window, positioning himself so she'd have to crane her neck uncomfortably to see him. "License and registration. Now." His voice carried a syrupy drawl that didn't match his city uniform. "Officer, I'm Judge Whitaker from the federal courthouse. I have my credentials right here." She moved slowly, telegraphing each motion as she reached for her purse. "Did I ask for your life story?" Halverson's tone sharpened. "Hands where I can see them." Nia returned her hands to the wheel, noting how Halverson kept glancing toward his dash cam. His movements seemed rehearsed, each pause calculated for maximum effect. Traffic slowed around them, and she spotted a teenager on the sidewalk holding up a phone to record. "My federal ID is in my purse, Officer Halverson." She kept her voice steady, professional. "I'm happy to show it to you." He ignored the offer completely. "You know why I stopped you?" "No, sir, I don't." "Taillights out." He gestured vaguely toward the rear of her car. Nia knew this was false. She'd checked all her lights just yesterday. "I don't believe that's correct, officer. I regularly maintain my vehicle." Halverson's jaw tightened. "Actually, your vehicle matches a description we received." The words came out with practiced precision, like lines read from a script. "We've had reports of similar vehicles involved in suspicious activity in the area." More cars slowed as they passed, drivers rubbernecking at the sight of a black woman being questioned by police. Nia noticed how Halverson seemed to pitch his voice louder, playing to this growing audience. "I can assure you there's been a mistake," Nia said, maintaining her composure despite the growing knot in her stomach. The stop felt wrong, staged somehow. Every few seconds, Halverson would glance at his dash cam as if waiting for some signal. "Step out of the vehicle." His voice rose another notch, clearly meant to carry to the gathering spectators. When she didn't immediately move, he barked louder. "I said step out of the vehicle!" Nia sat perfectly still, hands visible on the wheel, mind racing. In her years on the bench, she'd heard countless testimonies about traffic stops gone wrong. She'd seen the pattern, how quickly these situations could spiral. but she'd never expected to find herself on this side of it, watching it unfold in slow motion. More phones appeared in the hands of passing pedestrians. The afternoon sun caught Halverson's badge as he shifted his stance, deliberately widening his footprint. His hand rested casually on his holster, a subtle threat that wasn't subtle at all. "Ma'am, this is your final warning. Exit the vehicle now." Halverson's voice boomed across the street, drawing even more attention. His eyes gleamed with something that looked disturbingly like satisfaction. Through her window, Nia could see his nameplate clearly now, could see the slight tremor in his hands that betrayed excitement rather than tension. Officer Grant Halverson was putting on a show, and she was his unwilling co-star. The evening traffic slowed to a crawl as Nia stepped out of her car, keeping her movements deliberate and calm. Phones emerged from every direction, drivers, passengers, pedestrians all capturing what was unfolding. The setting sun cast long shadows across the street, turning the scene into a stark display of silhouettes against golden light. "Hands behind your head," Halverson commanded, his voice echoing off nearby buildings. "Move to the front of the vehicle." Nia complied, her heels clicking against the pavement as she walked forward. Her navy blazer, pristine from the courthouse event, now felt like insufficient armor. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, hear the murmurs of gathering onlookers. Without warning, Halverson grabbed her wrists, yanking them down and back with unnecessary force. He slammed her forward, bending her over her own car's hood. The metal felt hot against her cheek, still warm from the engine. Her shoulder joints screamed in protest as he twisted her arms higher than necessary. "Stop resisting!" Halverson shouted, though Nia hadn't moved a muscle. "I said stop resisting!" "I am not resisting," Nia stated clearly, loud enough for nearby phones to pick up. "This is unnecessary force, Officer Halverson." He responded by twisting her wrists higher. "Spread your legs." The command carried a note of satisfaction, of power being exercised simply because it could be. Nia remained still as Halverson began his pat-down. His hands moved with degrading thoroughness, lingering too long in places they shouldn't. Each touch felt like an intentional violation, designed to humiliate rather than search. A second patrol car pulled up, its lights adding to the circus atmosphere. Another officer stepped out but kept his distance, watching the scene unfold with practiced indifference. The crowd had grown larger, their phones capturing every moment. "Well, well, well," Halverson announced theatrically. "What do we have here?" His hand moved to her waistband with exaggerated precision. Nia felt something being pressed against her hip, something that hadn't been there seconds ago. "That's not mine," she said firmly. "Whatever you're claiming to find was not on my person." Halverson held up a small plastic bag, making sure the gathering crowd could see it. "Look what we got here, folks." His voice carried the fake surprise of a bad actor. "Seems like somebody's been carrying something they shouldn't." "I am a federal judge," Nia declared, her voice steady and clear. "I demand to speak with your supervisor immediately. This is a clear violation of—" Halverson leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear. "People like you don't get to sit above us." The words came out in a whisper, meant for her alone, dripping with contempt. Then louder, for his audience. "You can tell your story downtown, sweetheart." "I am Judge Nia Whitaker of the Federal District Court," she repeated, directing her words toward the second officer. "This is a false arrest, and I require immediate supervisor presence." "Never heard of you," Halverson said loudly, though Nia had seen him in her courtroom just last month. He produced his handcuffs with a flourish. "You have the right to remain silent." The metal clicked cold around her wrists, tighter than necessary. Nia kept her face composed as Halverson yanked her upright, but inside a fury was building, controlled, focused, and absolute. She caught her reflection in her car window, a respected federal judge, being publicly humiliated in her own city. The gathering crowd parted as Halverson marched her toward his patrol car. Phones followed her movement, capturing her expression, transitioning from initial shock to something harder, more determined. She held her head high, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her bow. "Watch your head," Halverson said with mock courtesy, then shoved her roughly into the back seat. The door slammed with finality, sealing her into the cage-divided space. Through the window, Nia could see people still recording, their phones aimed at her face like weapons. The second officer finally approached Halverson, their casual conversation visible but inaudible through the glass. They shared a look that spoke volumes. This was routine for them, just another day on patrol. As the car pulled away from the curb, Nia sat perfectly straight, shoulders back, chin lifted. The initial shock of the frame-up was crystallizing into something else, a cold, precise anger that she'd spent a lifetime containing. She watched her car grow smaller in the rear window, surrounded by people documenting her humiliation, and felt the familiar weight of injustice settling onto her shoulders. Not as a burden this time, but as fuel. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Officer Halverson paraded Judge Nia Whitaker through the jail's processing area. The institutional walls seemed to amplify every sound. Footsteps, voices, the metallic clang of doors, creating an atmosphere designed to intimidate. "Got a special one for you tonight," Halverson announced to the desk sergeant, his voice carrying unnecessary volume across the room. Several officers paused their work to watch, some poorly hiding their smirks. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man with thinning gray hair, peered at Nia over reading glasses. "Let's hear the report, Officer Halverson." Halverson cleared his throat theatrically, pulling out his notepad. Subject was observed driving erratically at approximately 6:45 p.m. Upon initial contact, subject displayed immediate signs of agitation and non-compliance with basic commands. "That's false," Nia stated firmly. "I require my attorney present before any further processing." The desk sergeant ignored her, nodding at Halverson to continue. Subject became increasingly confrontational. Halverson read on, each word carefully chosen to paint a picture that bore no resemblance to reality, demonstrated hostile body language, and refused to follow simple instructions. During the subsequent legal search, a substance believed to be illegal narcotics was discovered on her person. "I want my phone call," Nia said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "I have the right to contact my counsel immediately." The desk sergeant leaned back in his chair, taking his time to shuffle some papers. "We'll get to that. First, we need to process you properly." He emphasized the word properly with obvious satisfaction. "Public defender will be available in the morning." "I do not require a public defender," Nia replied. "I have private counsel. This is a deliberate delay of my rights, and you know it." Through the processing area's windows, camera flashes were already visible. News vans had begun arriving, their satellite dishes reaching into the darkening sky like mechanical trees. "Arms out," a female officer instructed, approaching with a pat-down wand. "Spread your feet." Nia complied, keeping her face neutral as she endured another search. Her judicial robe felt miles away now, but she maintained the same dignity she carried on the bench. Behind the processing counter, a small TV mounted to the wall was already showing the cell phone footage from the street. The images looked surreal, her own face pressed against her car hood. Halverson's theatrical discovery, the growing crowd of onlookers. The news ticker beneath read, "Federal judge arrested, drugs found." "Face forward," the desk sergeant commanded, holding up a camera for her mugshot. No smiling. Nia stood straight, chin level, eyes steady. She wouldn't give them tears. She wouldn't show fear. The camera flashed once, twice, 3 times. Turn left, now right. Each flash felt like another attempt to strip away her identity, to transform her from Judge Whitaker into just another number in their system. But Nia had spent her entire career facing down bigger threats than this. She kept her shoulders back, her expression composed. Hours crawled by in the holding area. Nia watched other arrestees come and go, noting how some officers smirked in her direction, whispering among themselves. Her request for a phone call was finally granted near 11, long after they knew most law offices would be closed. When they finally processed her release on conditions, the night had grown old. The desk sergeant made a show of reading her restrictions. No travel outside the jurisdiction. Regular check-ins. Any violation will result in immediate— "I understand the conditions," Nia cut him off. "I've issued them myself many times." Stepping out of the jail, Nia was immediately assaulted by camera flashes and shouted questions. Reporters pressed close, microphones thrust toward her face like accusing fingers. "Judge Whitaker, how do you respond to the charges? Were the drugs found in your vehicle? Will you be stepping down from the bench? What message does this send to the community?" Nia moved through them with measured steps, her voice clear and singular. "I will answer in court." She repeated it like a mantra, pushing past the wall of cameras and questions. The drive home felt surreal. Streets that she'd traveled thousands of times now seemed alien and hostile. Her house came into view just before midnight, dark and silent, looking more like a stranger's home than her own. As she approached her front porch, something caught her eye. A bouquet lay on her welcome mat, but even in the dim porch light, she could tell these weren't congratulatory flowers. The roses were dead, their petals black and withered, arranged with deliberate menace. No card, no signature needed. The message was clear enough. Nia stood looking down at the dead flowers, her hand frozen above her door lock. In the distance, a car engine started and faded away, leaving her alone with the silent warning at her feet. Nia sat in her home office, the desk lamp casting long shadows across stacks of legal volumes and case files. A cup of coffee grew cold beside her notepad, untouched since she'd poured it on autopilot. The clock on her wall ticked past midnight, each sound echoing in the tense quiet. The front door burst open with a controlled fury that could only be Alyssa Moreno. Nia heard her friend's rapid footsteps, then watched her appear in the doorway, still wearing a wrinkled blazer from court earlier that day. "Those bastards!" Alyssa spat, dropping her briefcase on a chair. Her dark eyes blazed with controlled rage. "I came as soon as I got your message. Tell me everything, Nia, every single detail." Nia straightened in her chair, switching into the precise mental state she used when crafting judicial opinions. "It started at 6:43 p.m. I noted the time when I saw the lights in my mirror." "Smart. Keep going." Alyssa pulled out a legal pad, her pen ready. Halverson approached slowly, deliberately slowly. He positioned himself just behind my window frame, hand on his weapon. The way he moved— Nia paused, remembering. It was theatrical, like he was performing for someone. What exactly did he say? Word for word. "License and registration. Now." Aggressive tone from the start. When I tried to show him my federal ID, he refused to even look at it, kept telling me to keep my hands visible, loud enough for people driving by to hear. Alyssa's pen flew across the paper. The taillight excuse? He claimed it was out, then switched to saying my car matched a description. Those were his exact words. Matches a description. It felt rehearsed. Timestamp on when he ordered you out? 6:47 p.m. He positioned himself to block his dash cam's view while doing the pat-down. But he made sure passing cars could see everything else. Nia's hands clenched slightly. He knew exactly what he was doing. Alyssa pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. "I'm requesting everything right now. Body cam footage, dash footage, dispatch logs, all radio communication, full chain of custody on the alleged evidence, and every second of jail intake video." She looked up sharply. "The viral clip is everywhere. Let's watch it." Nia nodded, turning her laptop screen. The shaky cell phone video played, showing her pressed against her car hood while Halverson shouted, "Stop resisting," to an obviously compliant person. "There," Alyssa pointed. "Classic move, creating a false narrative for the video. We'll tear that apart in court." She made another note. "What was jail processing like?" "They delayed my phone call. refused to acknowledge my request for counsel. The desk sergeant treated it like entertainment. Nia picked up her pen, creating a precise timeline with times, names, and exact quotes. Halverson's report used loaded language, agitated, non-compliant, hostile body language. Of course it did. Alyssa pulled out her phone again, dialing quickly. After a moment, she spoke in a low voice. "Marcus? Yeah, it's Moreno. I need a favor. Judge Whitaker's arraignment. I need to know the second it's scheduled, and who's assigned." She listened, nodding. "Thanks. I owe you." Hanging up, she turned back to Nia. "My clerk contact will keep us posted. We need to get ahead of—" Nia's phone lit up on the desk, displaying unknown number. The room fell silent as she answered, putting it on speaker. Nothing but breathing came through the line. Slow, deliberate. 10 seconds passed. Then 15. Then a click. And silence. Nia and Alyssa stared at each other across the desk. The message couldn't have been clearer. This wasn't just a random traffic stop gone wrong. This was calculated. Orchestrated. "They're watching the house," Alyssa said quietly, moving to peek through the window blinds. "The dead flowers on my porch when I got home," Nia added. "They were fresh. Someone put them there while I was being processed." Alyssa turned from the window, her expression hardening. "This is coordinated harassment. They're trying to intimidate you into backing down." She walked back to her briefcase, pulling out more files. "We document everything. Every call, every incident, every piece of evidence." Nia nodded, adding the phone call to her timeline with clinical precision. 1:47 a.m., unknown caller. Duration, 23 seconds. No speech, breathing only. "The arraignment will be fast-tracked," Alyssa continued, spreading papers across the desk. "They'll want to maximize the media impact. We need to be ready for every possible angle they might try." Halverson kept glancing at his dash during the stop. Nia remembered suddenly. Like he was waiting for a signal. There might have been another vehicle nearby, coordinating. "We'll subpoena traffic camera footage from the whole area." Alyssa made another note. "Time range, 6:30 to 7 p.m. should cover it." Nia rubbed her temples. The second officer who arrived. He stayed back, just watching. Like he was there to witness, not assist. Name and badge number? I couldn't see them clearly, but he was tall, white, maybe mid-30s, clean-shaven. Nia closed her eyes, picturing the scene. His nameplate might have started with R. Morning light filtered through the Venetian blinds in Alyssa's downtown office, casting striped shadows across scattered legal documents. Nia sat in a leather chair, her posture perfect despite exhaustion, while Alyssa paced the room, phone pressed to her ear. "What do you mean, processing delay?" Alyssa demanded into the phone. "The body cam footage should be available immediately." She listened, her jaw tightening. "That's not department policy, and you know it." Hanging up, she turned to Nia. "They're stonewalling. Claims of technical issues with the footage upload. The evidence log is being reviewed. Even basic incident reports are suddenly buried in red tape." "Standard playbook," Nia observed, making another note in her timeline. "Delay until memories fade and footage disappears." Alyssa's office phone buzzed. Her assistant's voice came through. "Ms. Moreno, U.S. Attorney Richard Voss's office is calling for Judge Whitaker. They're requesting an immediate private meeting." Nia and Alyssa exchanged looks. "Interesting timing," Alyssa said after clicking off. "He wants a respectful conversation in the Federal Building conference room." "Of course he does." Nia stood, smoothing her blazer. "Time to hear their first offer. You shouldn't go alone. If I bring counsel, they'll say I'm escalating. Let me hear him out." Nia gathered her purse. "I'll record every word in my head like a transcript." The Federal Building conference room was all polished wood and muted lighting, designed to make power feel civilized. Richard Voss stood when Nia entered, his silver hair and tailored suit projecting authority and concern. "Judge Whitaker," he gestured to a chair. "Thank you for meeting privately. This situation is unfortunate." "Is that what we're calling a false arrest?" Mr. Voss? Nia sat, her voice steady. Please. He smiled paternally. Let's keep this constructive. I'm here to help find a dignified resolution. Resolution requires evidence. I'd like to see the body cam footage. Ah, Voss steepled his fingers. About that. There seems to be some technical difficulty with the files, but that's exactly why I wanted to talk. This media circus, it's not good for anyone. The bench's reputation, the public trust, these things are delicate. So is due process. Indeed, he leaned forward, which is why I'm suggesting a quieter path, a dignified resignation, citing personal reasons, no charges filed, no more embarrassing headlines. Everyone moves on. Nia met his gaze. You want me to resign based on planted evidence and a false arrest? I want you to protect your dignity, Voss said smoothly. This doesn't have to become political. Some battles aren't worth the cost, especially when friends are offering a clean exit. Friends don't plant drugs on colleagues, Mr. Voss. That's a serious allegation, Your Honor. His tone chilled slightly. One that could damage a lot of careers if pursued, recklessly. So could tampering with evidence and violating civil rights. Nia stood. I want the body cam footage, the dash footage, and the evidence log. Today, you're making this harder than necessary. Voss's mask of concern slipped for just a moment. Think about your future. I am, along with everyone else's who's been framed this way. She moved toward the door. File your motions, Mr. Voss. I'll see you in court. The drive home felt longer than usual. Nia checked her mirrors constantly, noting every vehicle that stayed behind her for more than a few blocks. As she turned onto her street at dusk, something looked wrong about her security gate. It stood slightly ajar, the keypad housing loose. She parked in the driveway, scanning the area before approaching the gate. The screws had been removed and replaced. Clean work, professional. Inside, her front door was still locked, but her living room told another story. Everything was slightly off. The couch cushions had been shifted. Books on the shelf were tilted at new angles. Pictures hung a fraction of an inch crooked. Nothing was missing, just moved enough to send a message. We can enter whenever we want. On her coffee table, centered perfectly, sat a color printout of her arrest. The image showed her pressed against the hood of her car, Halverson looming over her. Someone had circled her face in red marker, the ink still fresh enough to smell. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alyssa. Emergency. They just filed a motion to remove you from all cases, citing pending criminal investigation and appearance of impropriety. Already set for hearing tomorrow. Nia stood in her violated living room, staring at the marked photo. The message was clear. This wasn't just about one traffic stop or one planted bag. This was about removing her completely, erasing her authority, her dignity, her power to effect change from the bench. She took a photo of the marked printout, then carefully placed it in an evidence bag from her briefcase. They wanted her scared, wanted her to feel violated and powerless in her own home. But they had miscalculated. Nia had spent her entire career studying how power protected itself. She knew every move in their playbook. Her phone buzzed again. Alyssa, how do you want to handle this? Nia typed back, document everything. File countermotions. They just gave us proof of harassment. She looked around her rearranged living room one more time, then began photographing every shifted item, every crooked frame, every piece of evidence that someone had been there. They thought they were sending a message of intimidation. Instead, they were giving her ammunition. The marble corridors of the federal courthouse seemed colder than usual the next morning. Nia's heels clicked against the floor, each step echoing as whispers followed in her wake. The same halls she'd walked thousands of times now felt like a gauntlet, filled with darting eyes and turned backs. A group of junior clerks huddled near the water cooler scattered as she approached, their faces a mix of discomfort and poorly hidden judgment. Only one remained, deliberately gathering papers with exaggerated slowness. "Morning, Marcus," Nia said, maintaining her usual professional tone. The clerk barely glanced up, his voice low but clear enough to carry. "They're saying you've always been dirty." He hurried away, leaving the words hanging in the air like poison. Outside Courtroom 3, Chief Judge Harrison waited with a court administrator. His expression was carved from stone. "Judge Whitaker, given the circumstances, you're being temporarily removed from the calendar pending review." "On what grounds?" Nia kept her voice steady. "Appearance of impropriety. Standard procedure." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Your cases will be reassigned until this matter is resolved." Through the courthouse windows, Nia could see a crowd forming on the steps below. Signs appeared, professionally printed, bearing her mugshot with crude captions, "Black Robe Criminal," and "No Judge Above the Law." Some faces showed genuine anger, while others moved with coordinated precision, like actors hitting their marks. Her phone buzzed, a text from her neighbor. "Talk radio just gave out your address. Said concerned citizens should make their voices heard." By 3 o'clock, the crowd had migrated to her street. Dozens of people milled about, some filming with phones, others shouting toward her house. A rock struck her front window with a sharp crack, spider-webbing the glass. A male voice bellowed a racial slur from behind the crowd's cover. Nia called the local police, following procedure despite knowing what to expect. 2 officers arrived 40 minutes later, taking their time stepping from their cruiser. The younger one kept touching his body cam, as if making sure it was off. "Something wrong with your camera, officer?" Nia asked. He smirked. "Technical difficulties. Happens sometimes." His partner made a show of writing notes, barely glancing at the cracked window or the lingering protesters. "Could be neighborhood kids," he suggested, though the rock thrower had been a grown man in a business suit. "Not much we can do without witnesses." "There are literally dozens of witnesses," Alyssa said, arriving with her own camera running, "and security footage from 3 angles. The younger officer's smirk widened. "Shame if those files get corrupted, too." They left without taking statements from the crowd, which had thinned but not disappeared. Alyssa moved through Nia's house with methodical precision, photographing the cracked window, the rock's impact point, the scattered glass. "Don't touch anything without documentation," she instructed, capturing every angle. Every threat, every act of vandalism, every official failure to protect you. It all builds the pattern. Nia sat at her desktop computer, pulling up public records. Speaking of patterns, she opened Halverson's arrest report from her stop, comparing it to other cases. The language jumped out immediately. Identical phrases, recycled descriptions, copied and pasted between reports months apart. In a case from last year, Halverson wrote, "Subject displayed furtive movements and appeared nervous during initial contact, leading to heightened suspicion." In Nia's report, "Subject displayed furtive movements and appeared nervous during initial contact, leading to heightened suspicion." From another case 3 months ago, a search of the immediate area revealed a small plastic bag containing suspected narcotics in plain view. Her report, "A search of the immediate area revealed a small plastic bag containing suspected narcotics in plain view." Even the timestamps followed a pattern. Traffic stops initiated exactly 17 minutes apart from previous calls. Searches conducted in precisely the same order with the same time intervals between steps. It was too perfect, too rehearsed. Alyssa looked over her shoulder at the screen. He's not even trying to hide it, just copying and pasting his way through frame-ups. "No," Nia said, opening more reports. "He's counting on no one looking closely enough to notice. How many defendants can afford to challenge these patterns? How many public defenders have time to cross-reference old reports?" Outside, another voice shouted from the street, followed by car horns and angry cheers. The protesters had found a new energy as darkness fell, their shadows stretching across her lawn like accusing fingers. Nia kept scrolling through report after report, each one adding to the emerging pattern. The same phrases, the same timing, the same choreographed dance of reasonable suspicion and probable cause, all leading to the same devastating results for those without her resources and training to to fight back. The kitchen table disappeared under spreading files and laptops. Empty coffee cups dotted the surface like chessmen on a board. Alyssa's fingers flew across her keyboard, drafting emergency motions with practiced precision, while Nia constructed a timeline so detailed it read like a court transcript. Motion for immediate preservation of all video and audio recordings, Alyssa muttered, her voice tight with controlled anger. Motion for sanctions regarding delayed discovery responses. Motion to compel complete personnel files. She hit send on each filing, the electronic confirmation pings like tiny battle drums. Nia worked with surgical focus, her judge's training evident in how she dissected every second of the encounter. Time of initial lights, 5:47 p.m. First radio call logged, 5:49 p.m. Approach to vehicle, approximately 5:51 p.m. She noted each missing data point, each convenient gap where records should exist but didn't. "Look at this," Alyssa said, turning her screen. The first batch of body cam footage had arrived, heavily redacted and clearly incomplete. They watched Halverson's approach to Nia's car, his exaggerated movements, the way he positioned himself for maximum intimidation effect. Then, at the crucial moment when he claimed to discover the drugs, the video dissolved into digital static. When it resumed, the bag was already in his gloved hand. "Convenient timing for a glitch," Nia observed, her voice cold. She adjusted her headphones, listening intently to the audio track. The ambient sound levels change right before and after the static, like it's been spliced. "Already documented and noted in the supplemental motion," Alyssa confirmed, adding timestamps to her growing list of irregularities. A car engine rumbled outside, too close and too quiet. Nia moved to the window, careful to stay behind the curtain. A dark sedan idled across the street, lights off, its outline barely visible in the shadows between street lamps. The doorbell rang once, sharp and decisive. Alyssa tensed, but Nia checked her phone and nodded. "It's Darlene Pike." The woman who entered moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen every trick in the book. In her late 60s, Darlene Pike carried herself like she could still chase down suspects if needed. Her gray hair was cut in a practical bob, and her eyes missed nothing as she surveyed the kitchen. Without a word, she moved to the window and studied the street. She pulled out a small notebook, jotting down details about the sedan. Black Chrysler 300, tinted windows, partial plate visible, starts with XRJ. They watched as the car pulled away, moving too smoothly to be a random observer. "Classic intimidation setup," Darlene explained, settling into a chair and accepting a cup of coffee. "They want you sleep-deprived, jumping at shadows. The goal is to make you feel watched every second, until you crack or give up." Her matter-of-fact tone somehow made it less frightening, reducing the psychological warfare to simple tactics that could be countered. She pulled equipment from her bag, small but professional-grade security cameras with independent power sources and cellular uplinks. First rule of evidence collection: redundancy. "We're going to cover every angle of approach to your house, with backup systems for the backup systems." Nia watched as Darlene moved through the house with practiced efficiency, installing cameras in overlooked corners and unexpected angles, each device connected to a secure cloud server beyond local jurisdiction. "The mistake they always make," Darlene continued, testing sight lines, "is assuming they only need to control official channels. But when you've been doing this as long as I have, you learn to build cases that can survive even if half your evidence disappears." She mounted the final camera, its lens catching the street corner where the sedan had lurked. "From now on, we build redundancy. No single point of failure." The kitchen table war room felt more fortified now, ringed by invisible electronic sentinels. Alyssa returned to her motions while Nia refined her timeline, adding Darlene's observations about the sedan to the pattern of surveillance and intimidation. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, but it felt less threatening with Darlene's cameras watching back. The retired investigator moved between monitors, fine-tuning each feed, building layers of protection against the darkness and whatever it might bring. The clock ticked toward midnight as they worked, each woman focused on her particular expertise. Alyssa wielding law like a sword, Nia mapping patterns with judicial precision, and Darlene ensuring that every move their opponents made would be captured, logged, and preserved beyond their reach. The courthouse cafeteria buzzed with its usual morning crowd, but the usual friendly nods toward Judge Whitaker had turned to sideways glances and whispers. Nia sat with her back to the wall, a habit Darlene had suggested, while Alyssa spread case files across the table like a shield. Darlene nursed her coffee, her eyes constantly scanning the room with practiced casualness. "The forensic expert can start tomorrow," Alyssa said, keeping her voice low. "Dr. Saeed's credentials are impeccable, and she's worked high-profile cases before." "Good," Nia replied, maintaining her judicial composure despite the stares from a group of clerks 2 tables over. "We need someone who can't be easily discredited." Darlene's posture shifted slightly. "Incoming." Young officer, trying too hard to look casual. Officer Evan Rourke approached their table, his movements measured and deliberate. He wore plain clothes instead of his uniform, and his clean-cut appearance projected an image of earnest concern. He stopped a respectful distance from their table, hands visible and empty. "Judge Whitaker," he said softly, "may I speak with you?" "It's about Officer Halverson." Alyssa's shoulders tensed, but Nia gestured to an empty chair. "Please sit, Officer Rourke." He settled into the chair, maintaining perfect posture. "What's happening to you isn't right," he began, his voice pitched low enough that nearby tables couldn't hear. "Halverson, he's done things like this before." Darlene watched his hands as he spoke, noting how they remained still on the table. Too still, like someone who had practiced appearing non-threatening. His eyes moved with similar precision, making just enough contact to seem sincere without staring. "You have specific information?" Alyssa pressed, her tone sharp. "There's been talk," Evan replied, glancing around before continuing, "about a special unit that handles certain evidence differently. Halverson's connected to it somehow. I've seen him meeting with higher-ups in parking lots, off-camera." Nia kept her face neutral, though her mind raced. "Why come forward now?" "Because it's wrong," Evan said, conviction coloring his voice. "I became a cop to help people, not to watch good judges get destroyed by corrupt officers." Alyssa's eyes narrowed. "That's very noble. Do you have any proof of these meetings?" "Not yet," he admitted. "But I might be able to get some. There's a coffee shop on 4th Street, the Daily Grind. I sometimes see Halverson there around 4, meeting people. If you want, I could let you know next time I spot something." Nia exchanged quick glances with both Alyssa and Darlene. The retired investigator's face remained carefully blank, but her eyes tracked every micro-expression crossing Evan's features. "We appreciate you coming forward," Nia said carefully, revealing nothing. "It takes courage to speak up against fellow officers." "Just doing what's right," Evan replied, standing slowly. "I'll text if I see anything useful. Be careful, though. There are bigger players involved than just Halverson." After he left, they sat in silence for a moment, processing the interaction. The cafeteria continued its morning routine around them, but their corner felt charged with tension. "Too polished," Darlene finally said. His body language was rehearsed. Clean hands, manicured nails, not typical for a street cop. "He's either undercover or playing a role." Alyssa nodded. "The timing feels convenient. Right when we're pushing for discovery, a friendly face appears with vague promises of help. But we can't ignore potential evidence," Nia pointed out, years of judicial balance weighing each possibility. "If there really is a special unit tampering with evidence." "Which is why we proceed carefully," Darlene agreed. "Let him think we're cautiously interested, but we verify everything independently." They spent the next few hours coordinating with Dr. Saeed, a forensics expert known for her meticulous attention to detail. Alyssa arranged for her to begin examining the evidence bags and seals first thing the next morning. Late afternoon, Nia's phone buzzed, a text from Evan. Be careful. Voss is involved. She showed it to the others. The message hung between them like a loaded gun. Potentially valuable information, but possibly a trap designed to make them show their hand. We move forward, Nia decided, her voice firm. But we do it our way. No meetings without recording devices, no information shared without verification, and everything gets documented in triplicate. Alyssa was already typing on her laptop. I'll have Dr. Saeed focus specifically on the evidence handling procedures first. If there really is a special unit mishandling evidence, it should leave traces. The fluorescent lights in Alyssa's office buzzed overhead as Dr. Mira Saeed leaned close to her laptop screen, examining the high-resolution photos of the evidence bag. Her fingers traced invisible patterns in the air as she studied the seal's edge. The office felt charged with anticipation. Nia sat perfectly still, while Alyssa paced behind her desk. There, Dr. Saeed said, her precise voice cutting through the tension. She pointed to a microscopic pattern on the seal. See these compression marks? They show a distinct double-pressing pattern. Alyssa stopped pacing. Meaning? Evidence seals are designed to show tampering. When properly sealed, they create a single, uniform pressure pattern. Dr. Saeed zoomed in further. These marks indicate the seal was pressed, opened, and pressed again. The second impression overlaps the first. You can see the slight misalignment here and here. Nia leaned forward, her judicial training kicking in. Would this hold up under cross-examination? Absolutely. Dr. Saeed pulled up comparison photos. This is what a proper seal looks like. Single impression, uniform pressure. The differences are measurable and documented. She switched to another image. But there's more. Look at these smudge patterns along the edge. The image showed faint oily marks along the bag's border. Dr. Saeed's finger traced the pattern on screen. These are sebaceous residue marks, skin oils. They appear in areas that should only have been handled with gloves according to standard evidence protocols. Bare hands, Alyssa said, already taking notes. During processing? Yes. And the distribution pattern suggests handling after initial collection. The residue overlaps areas that should have been pristine if proper procedures were followed. Dr. Saeed's voice remained clinical, but her eyes showed controlled anger. This isn't just sloppy work, it's deliberate contamination. Nia watched the evidence build, her face composed, but her heart racing. This was the first concrete proof that the drugs were planted after her stop began. She thought of Halverson's theatrical pat-down, how he'd angled away from cameras at the crucial moment. Time to file, Alyssa announced, already drafting on her computer. We demand a full evidentiary hearing. Halverson explains those camera glitches under oath, and we get Dr. Saeed's findings on record. While Alyssa worked, Darlene entered quietly, carrying a thick folder. She'd spent days digging through Halverson's patrol history. You need to see this, she said, spreading documents across a side table. His complaint record should have gotten him suspended 3 times over, but look, every serious write-up gets marked unfounded by the same 2 supervisors. Protected, Nia observed, studying the pattern. Very, Darlene agreed. He's their go-to man for certain types of stops, the kind that end in convenient discoveries. Alyssa looked up from her motion draft. Names of these supervisors? Lieutenant Marcus Walsh and Captain Stephen Reeves, Darlene reported. Both tied to internal affairs somehow, both with connections to Voss's office. Dr. Saeed gathered her materials carefully. I'll prepare a full report for the hearing. The evidence tampering is clear enough that even a hostile judge will have to acknowledge it. As if on cue, Nia's phone buzzed with a news alert. The local paper's website had updated its coverage. Questions raised in judge arrest. Evidence handling under scrutiny. The article was cautious, but noted inconsistencies in the arrest report. They're hedging their bets, Alyssa observed. They can smell which way the wind's blowing. Which means we need to be extra careful, Darlene warned. This is when they get desperate. When their story starts falling apart, they escalate. Nia nodded. remembering similar patterns from her civil rights cases. We document everything. No meeting alone, no unsealed evidence, no unrecorded conversations. Dr. Saeed packed her laptop with methodical precision. I'll have the full analysis ready by morning. The compression patterns alone are damning, but I want to run additional tests on the residue distribution. They wrapped up the session as evening settled over the city. Alyssa's motion would hit the court first thing tomorrow, demanding both the hearing and preservation of all related evidence. The momentum felt like it was finally shifting. Nia drove home through familiar streets, streetlights casting alternating patterns of light and shadow across her dashboard. She felt cautiously hopeful, but remained alert. She'd learned long ago that justice required both patience and vigilance. Pulling into her driveway, she noticed something wrong in her headlight's beam. She parked and walked around her car slowly, her phone's camera already recording. There, carved deep into the driver's side door, was a crude slur. The letters were jagged, angry, not just vandalism, but hatred made visible. Nia didn't flinch. She photographed the damage from multiple angles, careful to capture the depth and pattern of the scratches. She logged the time, date, and location in her ongoing documentation. Then, standing in her driveway under the security lights she'd installed, she spoke clearly for the recording. You're giving us motive. Every act of intimidation is one more piece of evidence. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps as reporters clustered like hungry predators. Camera lights flashed against the limestone walls, while Nia and Alyssa approached, maintaining their practiced composure. Microphones thrust forward like accusing fingers. Judge Whitaker, how do you respond to the new allegations against Dr. Saeed? The question hit like a physical blow. Nia hadn't even reached the courthouse doors when her phone buzzed with the breaking news. Forensic expert under investigation. Previous cases called into question. An anonymous source had filed a complaint claiming Dr. Saeed falsified results in another jurisdiction. Alyssa stepped forward, shielding Nia from the cameras. No comment at this time. We stand by our evidence and look forward to presenting it in court. Inside the courthouse lobby, Alyssa's phone chimed with an urgent email. Her face tightened as she read. Ethics complaint, she said quietly. They're claiming I pressured potential witnesses. She showed Nia the notice. Vague allegations about inappropriate contact with officers, threatening severe professional consequences. They're trying to neutralize everyone who can help us, Nia observed, her voice steady despite the growing knot in her stomach. She checked her own phone, finding texts from her security company. The cameras at her house had supposedly malfunctioned overnight. The same night, her gate lock was tampered with again. They were halfway to the courtroom when Evan Rourke appeared, flanked by 2 senior officers. His earnest expression was gone, replaced by something cold and practiced. He nodded to his superiors and began reading from a prepared statement. I need to report attempts to influence an ongoing investigation, he announced, loud enough for nearby clerks to hear. Judge Whitaker approached me multiple times, attempting to pressure officers into changing their statements. Nia felt the air leave her lungs. Every conversation with Rourke, he had been recording, twisting, preparing this moment. His helpful hints about Voss, his concerned warnings, all of it carefully crafted to build this lie. Before Alyssa could intervene, 2 deputies approached with handcuffs visible. Judge Whitaker, one announced formally, you're under arrest for witness intimidation and attempting to obstruct justice. The courthouse crowd parted as they cuffed her, again in broad daylight, again as a spectacle. Phones emerged to capture her second walk of shame. Through the glass doors, she glimpsed Halverson leaning against a patrol car, watching with undisguised satisfaction. His smile said everything. The machine protects itself. They processed her through booking for the second time, each step deliberately slow and public. The same desk sergeant from her first arrest made a show of reading her rights, dragging out each word. Other officers wandered past her holding cell, stealing glances like tourists at a zoo exhibit. Hours crawled by in the cold cell. No phone calls allowed this time. They cited special circumstances and ongoing investigation risks. Through the bars, Nia watched the shift change, noted which officers smirked and which looked away. She documented every detail in her mind, maintaining her judicial discipline even here. As evening settled over the jail, laughter echoed down the corridor. Two voices, male, probably near the break room. "Even judges get cages," one said, loud enough to carry. "Bet she ain't feeling so high and mighty now." Nia sat perfectly still on the hard bench, back straight despite her exhaustion. They wanted her broken, wanted her to feel small, helpless, stripped of dignity. The entire day had been choreographed for maximum humiliation. The public arrest, the delayed processing, the isolation, the casual cruelty. She thought of Dr. Saeed's careful analysis, now buried under manufactured scandal. She thought of Alyssa fighting baseless ethics charges designed to silence her. She thought of Rourke's betrayal, so carefully planned and executed. They weren't just attacking her case. They were systematically destroying anyone who tried to help her. The holding cell's fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows. Down the hall, keys jingled as another officer made his rounds, boots clicking against concrete. Each sound, each moment of confinement was meant to wear her down, to make her feel powerless. Nia closed her eyes, controlling her breathing just as she did on the bench during difficult testimony. She had seen this before from the other side. Defendants worn down by the system until they broke, until they accepted whatever deal would make it stop. The machine was built to break spirits, to exhaust resistance, to make truth feel impossible. A guard walked past, deliberately rattling his baton against her cell bars. "Comfortable, Your Honor?" he asked, mockery dripping from the title. She met his gaze calmly, neither flinching nor responding. She had spent her career studying how power worked, how institutions protected themselves, how corruption flourished in shadows. They thought they were teaching her helplessness. Instead, they were showing her exactly how their machine operated. And every machine had its vulnerabilities. The holding cell's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Nia sat perfectly still, her back straight against the cold concrete wall. Her judicial robes felt like a distant memory now, but her composure remained unshaken. Each slow breath helped steady her racing thoughts, transforming anger into analytical focus. Around 3 in the morning, keys rattled in the corridor. Alyssa appeared with a uniformed officer, her face tight with controlled fury. "You're being released," she announced, her tone carefully neutral until the officer moved away. They dragged out the paperwork as long as they legally could. In the empty booking area, Alyssa kept her voice low. "They filed the ethics complaint to try to remove me as your counsel. It's a standard intimidation tactic. They go after the lawyers when they can't break their targets." She handed Nia a thick manila envelope. "But they didn't expect Darlene to spend all day building us a counter-strategy." Outside, the night air felt sharp and clean after hours in the cell. Darlene's car idled nearby, its headlights off. The retired investigator sat behind the wheel, alert despite the hour, scanning the parking lot with practiced attention to detail. "Get in," Darlene said simply. "We need somewhere private to talk." They drove in silence until reaching an all-night diner on the outskirts of town. Darlene chose a corner booth with clear sightlines to all exits. A tired waitress brought coffee none of them would drink. "We've been playing defense," Darlene began, spreading photographs across the table. "That's exactly what they want. They control the timing, the narrative, the evidence chain. We need to flip their playbook." Nia studied the photos, surveillance shots of Halverson's recent traffic stops, his interactions with other officers, his pattern of targeting specific types of drivers. "He's methodical," she observed. "Repeats the same approaches, same phrases, same body language." "Exactly," Darlene nodded. "Predators have patterns. They get comfortable with methods that work. And, from what I've seen, Halverson can't resist the power rush of these stops. especially when he thinks he's untouchable. Alyssa pulled out her laptop, showing a detailed timeline she'd assembled. Look at the consistencies in his reports. The same escalation triggers, the same probable cause language, even the same time gaps in his body cam footage. He's not creative, he's repetitive. Because repetition is safe, Nia said quietly, her judicial experience clicking into place. Corruption follows predictable paths because deviation creates risk. They stick to what's worked before. Darlene laid out more documents. I still have contacts in federal oversight. Not local, we can't trust anything Voss might influence, but external channels. Inspector General's office, specialized task force liaisons, people who investigate pattern misconduct and civil rights violations. We need redundancy, Alyssa added. Multiple recording sources, secured evidence chains, independent observers. No single point of failure they can compromise. For the next 2 hours, they meticulously documented every harassment incident. Nia recorded a detailed sworn statement, her judge's precision creating an airtight timeline. Every phone call, every home invasion, every intimidation attempt logged with exact times and supporting details. Alyssa prepared a sealed filing outlining the full scope of the conspiracy, the media manipulation, the evidence tampering, the coordinated pressure campaign. Darlene made calls to trusted federal contacts, carefully laying groundwork for external oversight beyond Voss's reach. They expect us to stay defensive, Darlene explained, to keep responding to their attacks until we're too exhausted to fight. Instead, we're going to give them exactly what they want, another opportunity to plant evidence. Only this time, we control the stage. The first hints of dawn began to lighten the diner's windows. Nia stood, walking to the glass to watch the empty street. Her reflection showed a woman unchanged by the holding cell's attempt to break her spirit. She turned back to her desk, where the strategy lay mapped out in careful detail. We're going to make them do it again, she said, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had marked her judicial career. On camera, with safeguards they can't touch. The words hung in the pre-dawn air, transforming their desperate defense into something else entirely. A precision trap built from the very corruption meant to destroy her. For the first time since the original frame, Nia felt the balance of power beginning to shift. Morning light filtered through the dusty blinds of Darlene's rented workspace, illuminating walls covered in detailed timelines, patrol route maps, and surveillance photos. The small office, deliberately chosen for its anonymity, hummed with focused energy as the team gathered around a central table. Darlene spread out a fresh set of diagrams. Every camera needs a backup, and every backup needs a backup, she explained, pointing to strategic positions marked in red. We're talking multiple angles, independent power sources, and secure cloud storage that uploads in real time. Nia studied the layout, her judicial mind dissecting potential weak points. What about transmission interference? They could try to jam signals. Already covered. Darlene pulled out a collection of small devices. These are military-grade recording units. Even if they block wireless, they store locally with tamper-evident seals. We'll have observers retrieving memory cards the moment anything happens. Alyssa paced the room, her usual confidence tempered by the ethics complaint hanging over her head. We need additional legal protection. They're trying to isolate us by threatening my license. That's why I called Harold, she continued, gesturing to the distinguished older attorney who sat quietly reviewing documents. Harold Kimball's reputation was spotless after 30 years of defense work, exactly the kind of co-counsel they needed. The ethics complaint is a standard intimidation move, Harold observed, his voice carrying decades of courtroom authority. By bringing me in, we create a buffer. They can't claim witness tampering when every interaction is monitored by independent counsel. Darlene moved to a street map marked with highlighted routes. We need to give Halverson an opportunity he can't resist. Predictable timing, unavoidable location, and just enough pretext to make him feel justified. A vehicle compliance check, Nia suggested, drawing on her knowledge of traffic court patterns. Something minor but documented, enough to create a lawful stop scenario. Harold nodded approvingly. Smart. We'll file the proper notifications, create a paper trail showing you're addressing it. Make it look routine. Alyssa opened her laptop, pulling up statistical data. Halverson's patrol patterns show he frequents these 3 corridors during specific time windows. If we time it right, he'll be the responding officer. But we control the evidence chain this time, Darlene added, displaying a set of specialized security seals. These are FBI grade, with unique identifiers that can't be duplicated. Anything they try to plant will show tampering. The team spent hours refining positions for the surveillance network. Each camera location was chosen for maximum coverage and minimum visibility. Backup power supplies were tested. Storage systems were encrypted and verified. Remember, Darlene instructed as they reviewed the technical details, we're building layers. If they compromise one system, 3 more are running. If they block one angle, 4 others are recording. No single point of failure. Harold drafted careful legal documentation to protect their strategy. Everything by the book, he emphasized. Every observer properly certified. Every device legally registered. Every procedure documented in triplicate. Nia absorbed it all with a judge's precision, understanding that success required perfect execution. They couldn't afford a single misstep that might invalidate their evidence. As afternoon light slanted through the windows, they moved to rehearsal. Nia stood in the marked position where the stop would likely occur, practicing the exact responses that would give Halverson no excuse for escalation. Keep your hands visible, Darlene directed. Movements slow and deliberate. Give him nothing to misinterpret. Voice calm and steady, Harold added. No matter what he says, maintain absolute composure. We need his aggression to be clearly unprovoked. They ran through the scenario multiple times, refining each detail. Alyssa monitored sight lines while Darlene tested camera angles. Harold evaluated every interaction from a legal perspective, identifying potential challenges they'd need to address. The sun was low when they finally paused. Nia stood by the evidence table, examining the security seals that would protect their truth from tampering. Her fingers traced the intricate patterns designed to reveal any interference. Alyssa moved beside her, both women studying the tools that might finally expose the corruption that had tried to destroy them. Their eyes met with shared understanding. This was their chance to transform humiliation into justice. This time, Nia said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of every indignity she'd endured. The truth won't blink. Early evening painted the city streets in amber and shadow as Nia guided her car along the carefully selected route. Her hands rested at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, perfectly visible through the windshield. The weight of hidden cameras and watchful eyes pressed against her consciousness, but her face remained neutral, composed. Traffic moved sluggishly around her, creating the perfect stage. Through her earpiece, Darlene's voice came steady and low. All systems active, observers in position. Right on schedule, like an actor hitting his mark, blue lights exploded in her rearview mirror. Nia's heart maintained its measured rhythm as she activated her turn signal and pulled to the curb with textbook precision. In her mirrors, she watched Officer Halverson emerge from his patrol car with that familiar swagger, that same theatrical patience in his stride. "Keep steady," Alyssa's voice whispered through the earpiece. "Everything's recording." Halverson approached her window, his shadow falling across her face. His expression carried that same practiced blend of authority and disdain. "License and registration," he drawled, just like before, just like they knew he would. "My license and registration are in my glove compartment," Nia stated clearly, her voice pitched to carry to every recording device. "I'm going to reach for them now." Halverson's lip curled slightly. "That taillight's out again." The lie rolled off his tongue smooth as silk. Then, right on script, "Vehicle matches a description we received." Behind him, phones appeared in windows and doorways. An audience gathered, just as he wanted. His voice rose accordingly, playing to the crowd. Step out of the vehicle. Nia narrated each movement with precise clarity. I am unbuckling my seatbelt now. I am opening my door slowly. I am stepping out with my hands visible. Halverson's confidence seemed to swell with each passing second. He positioned himself exactly as before, angling his body to block the clearest sightlines from the street, certain his body cam would conveniently malfunction at the crucial moment. "Hands on the hood," he commanded, voice rising further. "Spread your legs." Nia complied with fluid grace, each movement measured and documented. Hidden cameras captured every angle Halverson thought he was blocking. The subtle shift of his weight, the practiced motion of his hands, the moment he believed himself invisible to scrutiny. Multiple feeds confirmed. Darlene's voice came soft in Nia's ear. Every angle covered. Halverson began his pat-down with aggressive precision, his movements designed to humiliate. His hand slipped briefly to his pocket, the moment they'd been waiting for. With the same fluid motion he'd used before, he attempted to plant the bag. Nia felt the subtle pressure as he tried to slip it near her waistband. Her jaw tightened fractionally, but she remained perfectly still, denying him any excuse for escalation. Let him own this moment completely. Around them, the crowd had grown. Phones recorded what they could see, but the hidden cameras captured everything. Every angle, every movement, every deliberate deception. In nearby vehicles and buildings, professional observers documented each second with practiced precision. Something in the air shifted. Perhaps it was the quality of the silence, or the way the gathering crowd felt different from last time. Halverson's confidence wavered for just a moment. His eyes flicked to his dash camera, then swept across the watching faces. The swagger in his voice cracked slightly. "What did you do?" he hissed, low enough that only Nia could hear. Nia's response came soft and clear, pitched perfectly for every recording device. "Nothing. I followed instructions." Traffic continued to crawl past. The evening light caught the badges of observers positioned strategically throughout the scene. Halverson's hand moved to his belt, his certainty visibly crumbling as he registered the weight of unseen eyes. The planted bag sat exactly where he'd placed it, but now it felt like a burning coal against his fingertips. Every movement, every word, every subtle shift of his body had been captured from multiple angles. The control he thought he wielded had transformed into a snare around his own ankles. Phones continued to record. Hidden cameras whirred. Professional observers made careful notes, and Nia remained perfectly still against the hood of her car, her composure a stark contrast to Halverson's growing unease. The carefully orchestrated trap had sprung exactly as planned, catching its target in a web of his own making. Every second was preserved, every angle covered, every deception documented beyond dispute. The truth, for once, would not be edited away. In a windowless room humming with electronics, screens lined the walls displaying synchronized footage from multiple angles. Nia sat between Alyssa and Darlene, watching the evening's events unfold in pristine digital clarity. Federal oversight agents moved efficiently around them, logging timestamps and cross-referencing feeds. "Play it again," Darlene instructed, her eyes fixed on the center monitor. "Focus on his left pocket. Time index 1942. The footage rolled with crystal precision. From 6 different angles, they watched Halverson's hand move in that practiced motion, reaching, positioning, planting. No glitches, no convenient camera failures, no angles blocked. "Freeze there," said a senior oversight agent. He pointed to a clear shot of the bag. "Enhance quadrant 4. The image sharpened, revealing a tiny batch marking on the evidence seal. Darlene leaned forward, her expression tightening. "That sequence, I've seen it before." She pulled out a thick file, fingers moving with practiced efficiency through documented cases. Here, and here, and here again. She laid out 3 arrest reports, each featuring identical batch numbers. Same markings, different arrests, months apart. That's statistically impossible with proper evidence procedures. Alyssa studied the pattern. These are all Halverson's arrests? Not all, Darlene replied. Different officers, same unit, same marking system. The drugs are coming from somewhere consistent. The senior agent made a call. Within minutes, a warrant was processed. As they waited, more footage revealed the depth of coordination. Halverson's movements weren't just practiced. They were choreographed, following a protocol refined through repetition. Check the metadata on those other arrests, Nia suggested, her judicial experience surfacing patterns. Look for supervisory sign-offs, handling authorizations. Digital records filled new screens. Names began connecting to names. Authorizations linked to specific supervisors. Chains of custody showed impossible overlaps, the same evidence apparently being logged in multiple cases simultaneously. There, Darlene pointed. That storage reference keeps appearing, but it's not in the main evidence system. The warrant came through. Teams mobilized quietly. In a forgotten corner of an administrative building, behind a door marked Maintenance Storage, they found it. Shelves of carefully catalogued drugs, each marked with the same batch coding system. A librarian's precision applied to systematic frame-ups. The logbook, Darlene murmured, scanning seized documents. Every withdrawal matches an arrest date. They weren't just planting evidence, they were running a supply chain. Financial records emerged next. Shell companies, consulting fees, private detention contracts, campaign contributions flowing through carefully laundered channels. At the top, U.S. Attorney Richard Voss's signature authorizing special operations funding through intermediary accounts. The donor connection, Alyssa said, pieces clicking. Private prison profits tied to arrest quotas. That's why they wanted you gone, Nia. Your sentencing reforms threatened the pipeline. Evan Rourke's role crystallized in the documentation. Internal emails showed his careful placement, his instructions to gather intelligence and provoke reactions they could use against Nia. His warning about Voss had been calculated to make them slip up, reveal their defense strategy. He was their early warning system, Darlene explained, disgust evident in her voice, reporting back every conversation, every plan he could detect. More footage poured in as teams executed simultaneous warrants across the city. Security cameras captured supervisors rushing to offices late at night, desperately shredding documents. But the digital trail was already secured, backed up, duplicated across protected servers. Nia watched it unfold with controlled intensity. How many cases? She asked quietly. How many people did they frame using this system? Darlene consulted her notes. Initial estimate from the logbook. At least 300 arrests over 5 years. Maybe more we haven't found yet. We'll need to review every case, Alyssa said. Every conviction, every plea deal taken under pressure. The senior oversight agent approached with another update. Federal teams are moving in now. Silent entries, no warnings. We're seizing everything. Computers, phones, files, the whole network. On new screens, they watched the operation unfold. Officers in FBI windbreakers slipping through darkened doorways. Evidence boxes carried out in steady streams. Supervisors led away in handcuffs, their faces pale in the harsh fluorescent light. Look at this, Darlene said, holding up a document. Directive from the donor intermediary to Voss. The judge needs to be removed by any means necessary. The program cannot sustain these losses. Dated 3 days before your arrest. Nia absorbed the scope of it. Not just one corrupt officer, but an entire machine of systematic abuse. The arrogance of power turned into carefully organized persecution. Each document, each video frame, each seized record, adding another layer to the exposure. Near midnight, Darlene turned to Nia as more federal agents moved through the building. It's not one rotten cop, she said, watching doors open and boxes stack up. It's a machine. And tonight, we got the gears. Morning light pierced through the courthouse windows as reporters clustered outside, their cameras trained on the entrance. Inside, The marble halls echoed with urgent footsteps and hushed conversations. The overnight raid had shattered the usual morning calm. Alyssa stood beside Nia in a side corridor, watching the security feed. "They're bringing him in through the back entrance," she said, her voice tight with satisfaction. "No special treatment this time." Darlene joined them, her tablet displaying live updates. "Federal marshals picked him up 20 minutes ago. He didn't go quietly." Through the security monitors, they watched Grant Halverson being led in. Not striding confidently like he owned the place, but stumbling, cuffed, his uniform replaced by civilian clothes. His face twisted with disbelief as marshals conducted a thorough search, making him spread his legs, checking every pocket. "How does it feel?" Alyssa muttered, watching him endure the same humiliation he'd inflicted on others. Harold Kimball appeared, his briefcase bulging with documents. "The charging papers are filed. They're not holding anything back." In the main courtroom, every bench filled quickly. Court staff whispered behind hands, stealing glances at Nia as she took her seat in the gallery. She sat straight-backed, hands folded, her expression revealing nothing. The proceedings began with mechanical efficiency. Halverson was brought in, his swagger deflated, eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. When he spotted Nia, his face contorted with hatred. The federal prosecutor stood, reading charges into the record. Evidence tampering, multiple counts, conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, obstruction of justice, false statements to federal investigators. Each charge landed like a hammer blow. 25 years possible. No qualified immunity for deliberate frame-ups. Halverson's composure cracked. "You can't do this to me!" he shouted, surging against the restraints. "I'm the police! I'm one of you!" "Sit down, Mr. Halverson," the judge ordered sharply. The outburst continued. "This is what we do. This is how it works. Ask Voss. Ask any of them." Marshals moved in to control him as his lawyer tried desperately to shut him up. But the damage was done. His words confirmed every conspiracy allegation in the indictment. News broke during the hearing that U.S. Attorney Richard Voss had submitted his resignation, effective immediately. Federal agents were seen entering his office with boxes and evidence bags. The donor intermediary's name appeared in court filings: Maxwell Thorne, CEO of private prison contractor Sterling Corrections, LLC. His company's stock plummeted as the connection became public. Darlene passed Nia a note. "They're executing search warrants at Sterling's offices now." The hearing continued with devastating precision. Evidence logs detailed years of systematic frame-ups. Body camera footage showed repeated glitches matching drug plants. Financial records traced payments through shell companies. When Nia's original case came up, the prosecutor didn't mince words. "The government moves to dismiss all charges with prejudice, acknowledging clear evidence of misconduct and constitutional violations." The judge granted the motion immediately. "So ordered. Judge Whitaker, this court apologizes for the ordeal you've endured." Halverson slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him as reality set in. His lawyer whispered urgently about cooperation possibilities, but the damage was too severe. The conspiracy was too vast, the evidence too solid. As the hearing concluded, preparations began for Nia's formal reinstatement. Court staff cleared the main ceremonial courtroom, arranging flowers and straightening flags. The chief judge would personally welcome her back to the bench. Harold reviewed the settlement documents, a substantial sum, most of which Nia had already designated for a new legal clinic focused on wrongful convictions. "You're not keeping any of it?" Alyssa asked. "The money needs to help others trapped in their machine," Nia replied. "That's real justice." Late afternoon sun filled the ceremonial courtroom as Nia prepared to retake her rightful place. Reporters filled the gallery. Colleagues who had avoided her now smiled warmly, though she noted which ones had stood by her from the start. Through a side door, she glimpsed Halverson being led to holding, his eyes hollow, his shoulders slumped. The man who had towered over her on the hood of her car now shuffled in chains. Nia straightened her robes, touched her father's old watch for strength, and prepared to address the court. The chief judge's introduction faded into background noise as she focused on the words she needed to say. Not for revenge, but for truth. Her gaze swept the crowded room, settling briefly on Halverson's defeated form. Her voice carried clearly. Authority isn't immunity. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.